Hey everyone, I'm Tara. I garden here at Wild Bird Farm in Zone 5 in central Iowa. Today I am going to show you around the hoop house. Now I had some feedback recently and it was valid feedback that when I've talked about the plants out here, I just say foxglove instead of the actual variety that I'm growing. And I know a lot of you are interested in that, so we are going to walk around, see how everything's doing, and I'm going to tell you each and every variety that's in here today. Now, as I stand in here, I hear some birds outside and I just heard a whole flock of geese flying over. Our dogs are barking, the sun is out. I see a little patch of snow right behind the camera, but other than that, our snow is mostly gone. Now, if you remember, we had blizzard conditions about 10 days ago, and we lost our power for about 36 hours about 5 days ago. So the weather in Iowa, and I'm sure other parts of the Midwest, is similar, that we are seeing just a beautiful week ahead. So it is going to get a bit windy today, so I wanted to get out here pretty early, and let's just talk a bit about the hoop house. Now this is a DIY hoop house. Essentially, we bought some of the parts, but we put it together ourselves, kind of DIY, just last fall. So this is the first year I have grown in this hoop house. However, I have a smaller one that I've been growing in for the past 4 years over here to the north of us. Now I came out yesterday and I weeded all the rows. So they are looking pretty good. Now the pathways I did not get to. I ended up watering, setting up the sprinklers in here and watered really well. Some of the pathways are a little bit muddy. I slipped around a little bit yesterday. So I think my eventual plan, I need to talk to my husband, but I think I'm going to put down cardboard in the walkways and then cover with mulch. Another option would be the black landscape fabric. I have never used that on the farm. I'm not super keen on it. I think in something like hoop house walkways, though, it could work well. I'm not a fan of snakes. I know they're good for our environment and I probably want to have them around, but coming in here and finding a snake under black cloth is not something that I'm interested in doing. So I'm leaning towards mulch for that reason. Now, having said that, mulch will break down, so I will have to top dress the walkways in here if I decide to go that way. So in addition to weeding and watering yesterday, I also put on my backpack sprayer for the second time this season. I did it about 10 days before. I used some fish fertilizer diluted in water and I sprayed all of the seedlings in here. I'm trying to really work on plant and soil health this year, so that is definitely one of my priorities. Now, just a quick bit about this space. We DIY'd this tunnel last fall. It is approximately 20 feet by 40 feet, so I would consider it a medium-sized hoop house. It's definitely not a larger one. Everything is manual. We have hand cranks on the sides. We're using plexiglass on the ends, so that's more of a solid wall, but then this is the 3mm plastic. We have an entire video almost step by step of how we put this up, and I will link that down in the comments below. So I wrote down all the variety names. I'm going to run through them quickly here while I have this in my hand, and then I'm going to take you off the tripod and we're going to get up close and personal and kind of look at how each and all the plants in here are doing. So in this middle row, I have the majority is ranunculus. Now the stuff up here closer that looks smaller, I planted out here in January. The stuff down towards the middle that's definitely larger, that was late fall planted. Now I prefer to fall plant everything, but I got these corms so late in November last year that I didn't end up putting out the majority of them. The ones down here that are larger, I put those corms out in early November, almost a month before I got my second round. So right here for the smaller ranunculus, I have Amandine Barbie, which is a beautiful medium pink, Amandine Cream, and Labelle Lemon. I do prefer to grow Amandine over Labelle, but they didn't have any pastel yellows. They actually had to substitute for me, so I'm trying some Labelle in here again. I have grown that before. I think my first year with ranunculus, I grew some Labelle. Down at the very end of this middle row is some Italian pansies. They're called appassionato or appassionato. I'm not sure how to say it. I bought those in plugs. I got them in September, planted them out here. When we get down close, you'll see that they are starting to flower. I have been going through and deadheading them, trying to encourage a little bit longer stem length. Now, I have used pansies before as edible flowers, and I've sold them in small clamshells to people that were maybe putting together baked goods or something like that where they wanted to use it as a decoration. So I plan to do that again, but really I'd like to get the stems long enough that I can sell them as cut flowers. Now in the very back corner, probably what looks the worst in the tunnel is foxglove, and the variety that I have in here is Dalmatian peach. I'm sure you've heard of that if you know anything about foxglove. Now these are generally first year blooming. I am interested if you've grown them in a similar situation as I am doing. I planted them out last fall in September. I'm planning to have blooms this year. I'm wondering if I can leave them in the ground for blooms next year. So if you have some experience with that, will you drop a comment below? Okay, I moved over to the other side so you can see the foxglove at the very back, and then that little strip in the middle, I put some anemones. Now I wasn't planning to plant any. I got a great deal on about 100 of them. I had a little bit of space, so in they went. And then right here closest to us, this is dianthus, and it's Amazon's Rose Magic. And if you've ever seen these before, they'll have a whole head of little flowers, but they're going to be varying colors from white and pale pink up into bright pink. They're really pretty. I have never had this many before, and I'm pretty excited for that. Now I will mention dianthus or Sweet William is the first thing I grew in my old small tunnel. And well, I would get probably 16 to 18-inch stems out in the field here. Inside, I'm getting 2 to 3 feet. They're absolutely gorgeous. I'm so excited to see the majority of this row in bloom with them. Then on this far side, we have an entire 40-foot row of snapdragons. Now with snapdragons, they give you a little bit of clue as to their color and variety if you look on the underside of the leaf. So I can tell from this middle grouping that they're going to be my Maryland lavender. Let me see if I can show you a leaf here. So while the top sides of the snapdragons are green, if you look underneath, these are pinkish purple. That kind of gives you a clue as to what color your snapdragon blooms are going to be. I hope you can see that that's pink versus green. So the middle is Maryland lavender, and I'm a little surprised. The middle doesn't look great. They look a little bit beat up. Maryland is more cold hardy, so I'm a little bit surprised they didn't do better than they have. Now on the far end, I have more Marylands, and those are apple blossoms. They are the pink and white blooms. They're beautiful. I've grown those in both Potomac and Maryland varieties before, both beautiful. And then behind me, which we'll get a close-up look, these snapdragons look the best so far, and these are the Chantilly pink. Chantilly is also an earlier group. I think it's a 1 or 2. I'll look that up and put it on the screen, meaning that they like to grow in cooler conditions. When I was considering varieties to plant out last fall, I definitely kept the varieties in mind that preferred or worked well for greenhouse forcing. So they were going to prefer to grow cooler and bloom a little bit earlier than, say, a Potomac or a Rocket variety. All right, I think we have hit everything in this house. I'm going to take you off the tripod and we'll just walk through so you can get a close-up look at how everything's doing. Okay, so ignore the pathways because I haven't weeded those, but the actual beds look pretty good. Here's the Sweet William or dianthus. Now, as I said, the majority of these are the Rose Magic. I did start a few white from seed, and that's kind of this end that doesn't look quite as uniform as the other. The anemones here, when I was out weeding, I saw one popping up. Let me show you. Right there. Oh, actually, there's 2 now. So hopefully this will be just filled with anemones. Now we may not get a great harvest this year because they're going to bloom later than usual, but I leave those in the ground in the hoop house as long as I'm not going to have to overwater that area. Now here is the Dalmatian peach foxglove, and you can see these look a little bit rougher than the other things in this tunnel. Now there's a bit of bupleurum that's self-sowed in here, and I put a tag because I also threw down some seed. Now as I was weeding, I'm hoping I didn't disturb the soil too much for those seeds. Here are those Italian pansies. Now I deadheaded really hard before I fertilized. But you can see there are a lot of blooms ready to push out here. Now, if you're wondering what these are, I just use this PEX piping. It's flexible. I pound a short bit of rebar in and just slip that right over. And then if I need to add frost cloth at night, those hoops hold that up well. Now let me get back a bit so we can compare the sizing. Now these were the amandine. They were called Tiger, and they were XL corms, and they got planted in early November. There is a tremendous bit of growth on these. I'm thinking we're going to start seeing blooms probably in a month. And then if you compare that, I would say the majority of the other corms I got were more like medium sized. This grouping might have been considered a large, but then as we walk down here, they're a little bit smaller. The corms got smaller. I kind of planted them that way. But really good growth, I would consider for just getting these planted out in January. Again, we're in mid-March here, and hoping for a really good ranunculus harvest this season. And then just to get up close and personal, these are the Chantilly snapdragons. Now you can see when I received these plugs, they had a central leader on each plug. But surviving through the winter, they've kind of died off that central plug, and now we're pushing a lot. So all of these little rosettes that you see are going to be a separate snapdragon bloom. And there is a ton of them. This is what happens when you take off the tops as you're growing your plugs. Instead of having one large leader stem, they're going to push several. So like this one, you can see this was the original leader that's probably going to die back, or I might even cut it off. But you can see a lot of new pushing from the base. That tells me that they had some good root growth over the winter. Now the lavender look a little more rough, but again, there's a lot of new growth happening. Again, I can come through and probably chop off this leader stem so it focuses its growth down here. And then these look very similar to the others. That wraps things up today. Hopefully this was helpful to you, especially if you have some sort of covered growing space and you're in a similar zone to me. These are some good options to try to overwinter in your space. I'll see you next time.